Navigating Technomedia, written by Sam Hand, highlights several interesting topics regarding media today, as well as the history of media, especially in the mechanical era. So that was especially the time when things like TVs, camera, telegraph, all of those things were invented. I want to take the quote that's written at the very start of the article by Philip Bray, and it says, "Technology made modernity possible." I think this is really important, and it goes back to one of the readings we had a few weeks ago about what came first. Was it technology that changed society, or was it rather society that changed the technology? And I think it's a really interesting point. So my first idea that I took from this reading was what Sam Hand writes is the widening global gap between those with and those without regular and effective access to the latest technologies. I think this mostly refers to the internet and how important internet has become in our everyday life. So I use the internet for absolutely everything. At the moment I'm traveling overseas, so I use the internet for keeping in contact with my friends. I use the internet for like maintaining my networks at home with colleagues, so I'm in regular contact with my boss in Australia. Even though I'm not technically working for them, I'm still keeping up that communication channel, and so hopefully when I get back I'll be able to still work there. As well as this, I'm continuing my volunteer efforts, so I still write my blog for my for the charity that I work for, and I still keep in communication with them. These are just a few examples of how the internet impacts my life. In saying that, I'm a uni student, so the way that it impacts my life is very basic compared to, say, a businessman who is constantly travelling all over the world. So while I'm fortunate enough, and most people in developed countries are fortunate enough to have regular and effective access to the internet, the truth is that not everybody does. So the reading talks about global justice and injustices, and it talks about the concept of globalization. So when globalization hit, for developed countries it was fantastic. All of a sudden we were getting, well, in Australia I was getting American goods, and it was fantastic. We all thought it was great. If you flick to countries such as those in the Congo, they really failed with globalization. They weren't able to access the goods and services that those in developed countries were. When the internet came along, however, it was predicted that this would change, that undeveloped countries such as those in the Congo would be introduced to democracy, and that the bureaucracies that had always limited them so much would no longer matter as much. So it talks about a global society and about progress, democracy and unity. So I think these are important concepts, but I think the truth still remains that these countries are still really underdeveloped, and even that with the internet and all the promises that the internet showed when it first came out, I don't think that much progress has been made. The second idea that I took away from this was the concept that technomedia don't replace other medias, rather they work together to form sort of hyperactive media. The example shown for this was the mobile phone. So mobile phones now, you can do anything you like on a mobile phone. You can not only make calls, but you SMS, you MMS, you send emails, you update your Twitter account, you update your Facebook account. You have applications for any number of things. I mean, you can have an application that maintains your budget every week. You have an application that can tell you how far you're jogging, or how many calories you've burnt, or that meal that you just ate at McDonald's, how many calories was in that. So that was what was used in the reading. However, I find the one that is most relevant to myself is the fact that technomedia, I use the internet to consume my news, and to, instead of turning on the TV, especially as I'm traveling at the moment, I don't have a TV, I have no way to watch TV. I have my internet connection, however, and so I use the internet to consume other forms of media that are more traditional, such as the newspaper and television news. I think this is one of the most important and most vital aspects of technomedia, and I think it's one that lots of young people engage in today. And I mean, there's lots of cries from older generations that young people don't engage in the news anymore. You know, like newspaper readership are going down, ratings aren't as high for traditional news media. However, we need to look at it from the different point of views that there are other mediums where people can consume news, and this is where technomedia comes in that it's not specifically replacing those kinds of media, but rather it's working together to put those traditional forms of media into new forms. The last topic I want to talk about though is the concept that technomedia, or rather just like technology advances of today, have taken away the concept of space and time. So there no longer is an issue of space and time with communicating across the world. So it doesn't matter your geographical location. On the internet, I could be talking to somebody in Egypt, and that's what happened in the recent Egypt protests. It didn't matter that they were in the Middle East. Everybody in the Western world knew exactly what was happening in Egypt because of Facebook and other social networking sites, and it was amazing. It created a phenomenon. So I think the concept of space is really important when it comes to technomedia. As well as this, it's the time concept is really important. I mean, you could be head of communications for a global company, and your company comes under a crisis. It doesn't matter that it happens at 3 a.m. in the morning. You've got the internet to use, that you can send out an email to all of your shareholders, stakeholders immediately, and they can receive that straight away. You can put a press release on the website and you've disseminated that message immediately. So I think these are two really important concepts, and one that we should one we can take forward from this article. It also introduces the concept that we're no longer moving physical commodities. So our economy is no longer based on making goods and services with our bare hands, putting them on a cargo ship and sending them to Australia. Nowadays we've got the knowledge economy, which means that we're producing thoughts and ideas and we're communicating them through the internet, and I think that's also really important. So just to conclude, the Navigating Technomedia reading definitely did highlight some basic points that we've already read about this semester, but it also introduced some new points, such as the global gap between those with internet access and those without, as well as the technomedia not replacing other forms of media, but rather working with them to create new hyperactive media tools. And then finally, the concept of relations of space and time changing. Thank you.